First of all, Steve, I've got to say on behalf of everybody, the fact that local lad Charlie's brilliant, but and I'm going to mention to you people like Terry Cotter and Tony Robinson from Taboo and all, a lot of the entertainers were on the golf course yesterday talking about it. Absolutely brilliant. It's the funniest 6.5 minutes I've seen on television for a long time. And from your point of view, it must have been absolutely superb.
Sorry, go on.
I'm just going to say, before we actually talk about that, let's talk about you, President. How did you get started, in comedy or juggling? Which came first, or did they both come together? How did you get started?
I took a very strange route, really. I suppose my love of performing goes right back to my school days when I really used to enjoy it. I remember in the last year of junior school getting cast as Rumpelstiltskin in Rumpelstiltskin. It's probably because I was the smallest in the class. That's probably the only reason I got the part. But I remember being so excited. I put everything into it. And I remember all the plaudits afterward. Oh, he's very good, he's Steve. And then a few years later, I joined the Oldham Theatre Workshop. And it was an incredible institution at the time. This is sort of the mid-1980s. And there were
This is where with the Oldham, at the Oldham Coliseum?
Yeah. Exactly. I went to the Oldham Coliseum first, doing a week. They used to do these wakes workshops where you go in and do a week of workshops with the Coliseum players and stuff like that, the rep company. And then as a result of that, I then went to the Oldham Theatre Workshop. And
a lot of the young people in Coronation Street,
absolutely,
actually come from the Oldham rep, haven't they?
Yeah, there's Michael Lavelle was there. He was just getting into career as I started. There was Sally Ann Matthews. I did Bugsy Malone with her. She was going in. I think Anne Kirkbride was one of the first from there. But she obviously, she was a few years young, a few years older than me, so she'd been left the workshop for a while. But it was a brilliant grounding into professional theatre and how it really was. You know what I mean? You know what? Probably nowadays there'd be restrictions put into place about what that things that David Johnson, who was the director, used to be shouting at a room full of young kids and swearing his head off, and you'd be shocked and horrified if you heard it in any kind of educational environment now. But it did give me a love of theatre. But I did have parents who were both in education. My dad was a college lecturer. My mum was a home economics teacher, and they both were very conscious of my education. So when I left school, instead of going down the drama route, which is what I really wanted to do, I ended up at the University of Kent doing economic and social history. So I got a degree in economic and social history at Kent, and when I finally left university in 1989, I then thought, you know what, I'm going to try and get into entertainment if I can, because I knew it was still my first love. And as much as, I had a lot of fun writing my dissertation on the theories of liberalisation and the labour aristocracy with reference to events in Rochdale between 1840 and 1870, I knew the comedy.
I've read it, it's brilliant. You should have stuck with that, pal. You should have stuck.
I know. Who hasn't read it, Norman? Who hasn't read that classic? And then, now this is now where things start to progress, because when I left university, I was just trying to find any kind of work, really, as you do, with a degree in economic and social history. There's not a lot of jobs available. But I was working in a bar, and a guy came in one night and he said, "Hi, Steve." He said, they're doing starting juggling classes at a school in Rochdale. I'm thinking of going down if you fancy it. I said, yeah, all right. Well, so the week after, I went down with him to this, it was called Skylight Circus. It's still going, this company. They've got their own buildings and stuff now. But at the time, it was just in a room at Alder Hill School in Rochdale. And I started to learn to juggle. And within 6 weeks or so, I got quite good at it. And I applied. At the time, there was a job advertised in the Manchester Evening News for entertainers at the Granada Studios tour, which was basically a tour of the Coronation Street sets and Baker Street sets, House of Commons, etc. So I applied for this job that was going there. And, cut a long story short, I ended up getting the job. Now, as a result of that, I delayed entrance to university that year to go back to university to do teacher training. That was what I thought I would end up being, a teacher. And I delayed it for 1 year because I enjoyed the entertainment a lot. And I delayed it for 2 years. And after 2 years, I then got poached by Camelot theme park and ended up working at Camelot theme park. And the rest is history. I've never looked back on, never been teaching since, never done it.
Yeah, just think you could have had a proper job.
Well, exactly. And my mum and dad constantly reminded me of that, constantly.
We have something in common. I don't know whether you know this, Steve, but you know the banqueting hall at Park Hall.
Yeah.
When I was with the Hall, we opened that in 1975.
Wow! See, really?
We started a folk night there every Tuesday night, and then after we went on to other things, and then they did the medieval banquets, and you were doing the jesters thing at the medieval banquets.
Well, funnily enough, I remember there was the minstrels when they used to do the banquets. There was a minstrel called Dave Galbraith.
Good mate of mine, yeah.
I was going to say, he absolutely idolised you. He thought you were, we used to get constantly updates on what the Weavers were up to, what you were up to, etc. And he was a lovely bloke. And you know what? I probably did more gigs with him than anyone else because of the number of banquets I did.
Yeah, big careful. So, I mean, obviously, you've got to a stage now where and can I just, by the way, say, when I asked you the question, it's the longest answer to any question I've ever asked. But it's summed it up. It saved me. I had 5 other questions. I've just. So
yeah. You put your hand up. You want me to stop?
No, not at all. That's why you're here. That's why you're here. But obviously, so you went on to that. But when you went to comedy and doing the juggling as well, under the current, and I'm saying current over the past few years, and especially when you were going, what call was there for a respectful, a music hall act in that sense, a real variety act? Which is what I like about the fact that you got to the final, and Terry Cotter and I, and if case anybody doesn't know Terry Cotter, great comedian if you get a chance to go and see him. And he said I would love you to win that because it actually shows what true entertainment is because there's such a variety. How difficult was it to get work when you're doing comedy and juggling?
It still is. I've always kind of battled, and this is why I think it's hitting a note with a lot of people is my act, because there's some remembering acts that kind of the last of the generation before me, like maybe your Joe Pasquale's and Bradley Walsh when he was doing his kind of stuff. When the alternative, what they deemed the alternative circuit came about, and it started to get a lot of political comics and a lot of and comics just doing straight stand up. For some reason, and I don't know when it was, but for some reason that circuit started to look down and frown upon anyone who brought anything else, even a guitar. You go on with a guitar, they're you're a music actor. Like you're not making people laugh in the right way, which has always baffled me. There isn't a right or wrong way to make people laugh. They just laugh. It's a natural reaction from when a brain meets your mouth and you do it. You know what I mean? So I've always found that I never really fitted in. I was born, if I'd been born, 50 years earlier, I would have been in that vaudeville era, or 100 years even better. Like I said, I've done the play about Dan Lee, you might talk about it later, but that era must have been amazing for performers like myself because they must have so much work. But I really had to battle really hard to get accepted anywhere, because of the nature of my act being, like you say, so it's variety, isn't it? And there's not enough outlets for true variety acts.
Yeah, I mean, the Leeds, we talk about the variety. I've had the fortunate thing with the Weavers of doing Leeds City Variety Theatre. When I was with the Weavers, we did it twice. I found something.
Hang on, right? Keep talking, go on.
I'm just going to say we did it twice a year for quite a few years. And then when I left the Weavers, they invited me back to do one of the old variety shows and as the comedian, it's tradition, the comedian always goes on last. But you can't use a microphone, as you would know. I'll tell you, in the very least City Varieties, you can't use a microphone because that's not what they were.
Yeah.
Very much the tradition and the fancy dress as well. And actually doing it without a microphone was brilliant because it's like you move around, and when I do the song, I move around all over the place. And I finished that and I thought, wow, I wish I'd discovered this years ago,
Yeah.
So go on, what have you got?
I found that this is from 1994. Right, January to June, and that was, at the time, this was probably my biggest gig. I've been going, it seems ridiculous now because I thought I was established. I've been going 4 years. but that was me. I was Mad Edgar at Camelot Theme Park. So that's me on the bill doing the good old days with Joe Pasquale. I don't even know any of the other names, but Neville King, you probably know Neville King.
Neville King, brilliant ventriloquist.
Yeah, amazing guy. Squire Ronnie Hayward, who was like a gentleman sort of comic, and then Julia Sutton, who was a singer. Yeah. But that to me, when I did that gig, I genuinely thought I'd made it. Really did.
Yeah, but again, it's still going, and it's still got the
absolutely.
It has an old audience because they appreciate and they get wrapped up in it. Let's. I know it's a big jump, but let's do the big jump. So we talk about Britain's Got Talent. We talk about the original auditions, or presumably everybody who's in the entertainment said, "Well, we'll all apply for this. We'll all apply for this." So how many auditions did you do? Did you get through on the first time you went, or have you been 2 or 3 times?
I have been asked for 8 years. 8 years ago, I was doing a showcase in Liverpool. I can't even remember who it was for now, for some cruise booking agency. And after the show, this young couple, came up to me and said, "We're from the Britain's Got Talent scouting team. We'd love you to be on the show." And they invited me down to London to have a meeting. And I went down at the Psycho, which is the same as the Sony building. It's a real plush building there in central London. And I spoke to them agent for ages, and they tried to persuade me to go on the show. And I said, "Yeah, go on then, I will." But then they pulled me from the show at the last minute, about a week before. This is 8 years ago. And so I said, "Well, if you're going to be that rude and say I'm going to do it and then pull me at the last minute, I'll never do it again." And so I pulled out and said, and so every year for the last 8 years, they've approached me and said, "Please, we're sorry, please come back, please." And then for some reason, but I'll tell you, I do know the reason, it's in my head, obviously. But this year, I gave in and I thought, go on, I will finally go for it. So I didn't have to do any extra auditions or anything. I was very lucky in the sense that I suppose that was my audition the years before. They had enough faith in me. And I suppose you look at the 30 years of experience surely counts for something. So that stood me in good stead.
Aren't you glad you changed your mind?
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? I keep looking. Do you know what? One of the things that made me do it in the end was I thought 2020. It's got a good ring to it. That. Yeah. I think I generally thought I think it's going to be a special year. I certainly didn't expect it to be special for these kind of reasons.
Yeah, I'm from Bolton. Be careful what you say about this, Royal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you move my square a bit further away from you?
Keep pushing everybody over. Let's get on to the show. I'm sorry for rushing, but there's so many things I want to ask you.
Yeah, of course.
Tell other people ask as well. With regard to the semi-final, you got through the auditions to the semi-final, and of course the major difference, of course, and from somebody who works in comedy, it's exactly comedy is an intimate thing. It's a closeness with the audience because you react with the audience. You see somebody do something, you can react, and then the buzz starts. When you did the semi-final, there weren't all the people in a theatre with 5,000 people in. You'd have been absolutely up there, wouldn't you? But there were the four judges, and then the screen at the back with the virtual audience. As somebody in comedy, what were your thoughts before you went into that, thinking, how am I going to cope with this, as opposed to a singer who could just get up there and sing the song?
Well, funnily enough, the one thing I kept saying to interviews early on about my audition, the audition one back in Manchester, I'd always had the attitude that I would go out there and ignore the judges. I said, I don't care about the judges. It's I'll do what you used to do and entertain that audience. So that's what I did. And so when it came to the semi-final, like you say, I just didn't have that option. There was the wall of people that you probably saw on the TV, and there was a sound of laughter. That was just someone on a button hitting a button. There was literally just the 4 people at the desks. So I had to address the judges. But you know what? It's just experience, isn't it? I go back to the medieval banquets and other corporate gigs I've done where I've been told, can you just go around the tables and entertain a few tables? And I just got myself into that mindset. I thought the 4 people, it's not 4 people who don't want to be entertained. You're not interrupting the meal. The 4 people who want to be entertained and they want to have a laugh. So go out and just do what you do. And so that's what I did. I went out, and the other thing to do as well is to shut out the fact that these are big celebrities that you're entertaining and so-called judges, okay? You've got to just go in there. They're human beings. They're going to laugh at the same things all human beings laugh at. It doesn't make them, you know what I mean? Celebrity status doesn't give you a different sense of humour. It's still the same sort of material. So that's the way.
Well, I remember, and I have to do this because I'll forget about it, but a friend of mine said, Alan Fawkes, who joined the Weavers as a floater, and he will always say, never overestimate the intelligence of an audience. And it's true. You know, whether they're businessmen or whether they're just down at the local pub or whatever, everybody has a sense of humour and they all laugh at the same thing, don't they?
Yeah, I think the only thing you have to break down is whatever's going on in their head before they arrive there tonight, whether they've got problems at home. There'll be a little bit of a barrier, and once you broke through that and they're relaxed in your company, that's when it opens up. And that's what I have to say, when I did that semi-final, I thought all the judges were just so relaxed with me. It was like being in a room with your mates. It really was. It was like being in a room with my mates and just having a few jokes with them.
Yeah. I mean, how long, when we're looking at you and the work that you've done before, obviously the difficulty is when you go from an auditions to a semi-final to a final, you've got to, you might do and the performance the other day was absolutely brilliant. How long did it take you to write that routine? And how many of them things that you included were in your previous that you've done over the years?
Well, obviously the initial gags about the hand gel and the pointing out my dad on Zoom, that was written just a couple of weeks before I did it. And in fact, the reference to my dad, I had to get permission on the day. Because I didn't know, they've been giving us a little bit of guidance, saying don't dwell too much on the COVID situation, which you understood, but I thought I can't not address the fact that I'm talking to 500 people on a wall. And the other thing I was worried about as well is being drawn, as well, you'll know, Norman, no matter how many gigs you do, but when you go on that stage, there's always some miserable person that you get drawn to and you keep seeing their face. For some reason, it's almost like there's a spotlight on them as well, isn't there? And that's what I dreaded with that screen. I thought there's 500 screens, I'm going to look at one and it'll be a family just getting up and making a brew. Do you know what I mean? So I was scared of that. But yeah, I lost my chain of thread now. What was I saying?
But you were saying with regard to how did you write the stuff? How did?
Oh yeah.
Are they different together?
I wanted stuff, and again, this is a thing at a final. You want stuff that's has had laughs, got like good laughs and big laughs in the past. The hardest bit was narrowing it down to, I mean, especially the musical bit at the end. Now, normally, that routine, when I'm juggling with the beanbags and stuff, is a whole river dance routine, and it lasts 3.5 minutes. Now, you only got 4 minutes on stage anyway, so you've got to trim that somehow. So I just really just narrowed it down and just bam, bam, bam. And you know what? It does work to your advantage, I think. It's a lot easier to narrow things down and make them punchy than it is to spread things out and make it as still entertaining.
Yeah, but it all, the funniest, and I'm going to say there was that much, the funniest thing was the 15 minutes gags in 15 seconds. Where did you get that idea from?
You know what? I'll tell you 2 funny stories about that, but that originated, again, at Camelot Theme Park. There was one year, I was working there, and I went in the souvenir shop they had on Park, and they had these little hammers that made this noise. And I was just baffled by them first of all. Going, why would first of all, why did someone invent that? Do you know what I mean? Someone just went to the trouble of, I'll tell you what would be a good thing is, a thing with a little jabber in it, in the middle of it. What's the point of that? And then I started to take it away with it. And I used to do, at the end of Camelot, I used to stand on the gate saying goodbye to people as they left. Thank you for visiting. Enjoy the rest of your weekend or whatever. And it got so repetitive. I used to do it as a rewind. I'm sure I've got one somewhere. I've got a jabber. Just have a look in that tray there. See, there's a jabber hammer. There's a jabber. Because I used to do this thing where I used to go, hello, enjoy this, have a safe journey home. And then I do a rewind where I go, hello, have a safe journey home. Hello. So that was the first gag I used to do with it. And then I started doing the speeding up stuff. When I put it into my set, I thought I'll try this idea that, and I've only got 50, you know, I'm running behind and doing 50 minutes. So it's an old routine that I've done many, many times. But the other funny thing is, the company that make them, this Jabba Hammer, have been in touch with me since Britain's Got Talent, asking me to be an ambassador for their product.
Hey, if you want a representative, I could put you a good contract together here, by the way.
Right, okay. I just like the idea that Jabba had my little face on him, actually. Might have a limited edition with that one.
Well, they're always handy things to have when you do your tour, of course, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah.
Memorabilia.
Well, what's funny, if I do, well, I'm hoping to do a tour next year now, but when you do a tour now, what's really strange is, again, this goes back to the sort of the alternative comedy circuit, which I normally work on. So they're always on about new, fresh jokes, get it all fresh. And in actual fact, a lot of people who watch Britain's Got Talent, they want to see what you did on Britain's Got Talent. That's what they're going to see for. So if I don't do my big beanbags, and the only thing is I've got to lug them massive beanbags. I've got to take them everywhere I go now. They hardly fit in the car.
I mean, it's again, it's channeling. Now you've got to that situation, and you've got through to the final, and then you get the votes thing.
Mm.
You know, I'll give you a tip here. Do you remember Bernie Flint?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Everybody remembers Bernie Flint. Good golfer as well. Bernie Flint. We played on the Sept Golf Tour, and we did quite a few shows together. And he, of course, won Opportunity Knock seven weeks running. I think he holds the record for the 7 weeks running.
Yeah.
I was chatting to him once after the golf about how this, and what it was, he actually delivered laundry to all the nuns and the convents around the Southport area. And because he was such a lovely lad, and you know what the Catholic nuns are like, you know, oh, but you thought, would you come and listen to the voice that God's given this boy, you know? Yeah, that's true. I could tell you a whole series of things that we did with the Weavers. And he said, and he mentioned to them that he was on that. And so what the Mother Superior did was to contact the head of the convent and tell them all to vote for Bernie Flint. And he said, and they just all voted for him. And he said, I kept winning week after week. I thought, this is amazing. And of course, every time he delivered the laundry, we voted for you there. You're a lovely boy. We'll make sure you're successful there. You know? So, you know, all you have to do is to contact all the convents.
Do you know what, Norman? Funny enough, I haven't thought of that.
Hey, Catholics always thinking.
Oh, very good.
But again, we talk about the stuff that you've done now. Then you come to the final, and the difficult thing is, how do I top what I did in them 6.5 minutes?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying for 1 minute, Steve, that you won't. I think the advantage you've got is the fact that obviously the judges are so much in love with you and the kind of entertainment. That sets the bar a little higher because they expect something different. It's the same with a comedy impressionist or Les Gibson, who we both know, who did all the voices. Once you've done your best Coronation Street voices and your others, and he does loads of them, you think, well, what do I pick that I can't do the same act again? Is that going to be a difficult thing, or have you already sorted out what you're doing?
I've been thinking about it. I'm a little bit less daunted because I had the same problem doing the semi-final routine, if you like, because usually the guitar routine that I did in the audition is my big finale.
Yes.
And after I'd done that, this was a similar sort of question I was being asked. How are you going to top that? What are you going to do? That's your big finish. You've got nothing else. So I know some people were really concerned what I was going to do. One advantage you do have with the amazing, and I, you know what, I've been cynical in the past, and I have to say this, the Britain's Got Talent team, and I mean from the very bottom to the very top, they're so behind the show and so want it to work that they throw everything at you. And one thing I was conscious of in the semi-final was to take advantage of that. There were some people advising me, oh, don't get lost, don't get too much on, make sure it's just you. And I thought, well, I'm never going to get an opportunity to work with a load of dancers, have explosions, have things falling from the sky. You don't get those opportunities every day. So with that in mind, I've got to go into the final now and try and think big. I have got a very good idea for the final, but there's no way I'm going to tell you.
No, I'm not. I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't
tell you. Because you know what it's like. You say something to someone and they say, "Where?" But what? Then you start doubting it in your own head. So while it's still positive in my head, I'm keeping it.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, keep it smum. You know, that's the best way to. That's the best way to do it. That's the best way to do it. So, is there anybody? While we've got people here, I know we could chat all day. Anybody want to ask? If you just ready, anybody want to ask a question of our special guest? We've got Mike Brake. Well, yes, Mike. What do you want to ask?
Hi, Mike.
Hiya. You all right, Steve?
Good.
How have you gone on with the booking since then? Has it gone through the roof, or is it?
Well, to be honest, I mean, it's a difficult situation we're in at the moment. There's not venues open to put booking, but having said that, yeah, there's been a lot of people inquiring. Certainly, I've had a lot of people for weddings, funnily enough, weddings and birthdays and street, wherever you can. But it got to the point where I realised on Sunday afternoon, there's so many emails, so many messages coming in for offers of work, and I thought, I've managed myself now for several years, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. There's no way I can keep up. So I'm looking at management at the moment. I've got one guy working for me at the moment. Whether I stay with him, we'll see. I'm hoping to. Because you got again, normal knowledge. You need to trust. Yes, they have, Michael. If you ask him, quite considerably.
Can I interrupt there? Of course,
Yeah.
Being the perfect professional that you are, Mr. Royal. All bookings that you've actually got in at the moment, you will honour, and you will definitely honour, which is an appropriate time for us to show a leaflet. If you want to go and see this very talented gentleman, Andrew, have we got any information there? Because there is a comedy club in Morecambe.
You're right.
Called the Comedy Circus. Look at that for a bill. Phil Walker, Steve Royal, and Norman Prince comparing it. Paul Emery again. This is the comedy circuit you were talking about, and this is something we talked about literally 5 or 6 weeks ago before we knew all this, before we were planning.
Yeah.
And I do apologise, Steve, but my picture seems to be bigger than yours.
You don't need. Hey, listen. Yeah. I've always said it's not where I have way more respect for any comedian who's survived in this industry. There's people always ask me, who's your idol? And they think I'm going to say like, maybe Peter Kay or maybe, a Lee Mack or something like that. And I always cite Ken Dodd.
I'm the same.
Because of the longevity of career over anything else, regardless how hilariously funny. It's very difficult to gradate comics because what appeals to one person doesn't appeal to other. But what you can gradate is the success and I measure that in the number of years you managed to survive in such a precarious industry.
Yeah, I would agree with it. People always do. They do tend to say, as you're in this business, who's your favourite? Who do you like? Les Dawson's another one for me. But
yeah,
Ken was the king because of that. And we all know at least you get value for money when you go and watch Ken Dodd, don't you?
Exactly. Yeah.
whether you want to stay 4.5 hours or not.
Yeah.
Anybody else want a question for Steve? Yes, Mike Jackson. Yes, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, just unmute. Steve, given we're in sporting memories, are you a sporting person yourself? Do you have a football team?
I do. I'm actually from Rochdale, Milnrow, Rochdale, but all my family from Oldham, so I'm an Oldham Athletic fan. So I'm a bit of a Latics fan. But I then have a lot of affiliations with so many other teams as well. I've done a lot of stuff, obviously being at Radio Lancashire for Blackburn and for even Bolton, Bolton Wanderers. Norman knows I've done stuff there for him and that. I do love my sport and I do love my football.
I say you'll get a bit of comedy at Bolton then.
Well, there's always comedy at Bolton.
You had to say it, didn't you, Jackson? You couldn't have a normal question without putting the boot.
Sorry, Norman.
Well, he won't be coming to the Wanderers anymore because he won't get paid.
Yeah,
unless I invite him along. So are Oldham in the second division?
Yeah, at the moment, yeah.
Oh yeah. If you're not busy, I host the Platinum Suite, as you know, the corporate hospitality.
Oh, when we play each other.
Yeah.
That'd be brilliant. Yeah, that'd be great.
It's not far off actually. I'll check on my calendar. Oh, it's 17th of October.
Oh, right. That's brilliant.
Which is great because we won't be able to get in until the 21st. That was the date that we were actually told. We were looking. Season starts obviously Saturday. We're hoping for the 21st to get the crowds in, but after this late.
Don't we need that? Don't we need it?
Yeah.
Well, that saved me 35 quid. Anybody else want any questions? Anybody else want any questions? Yes, Keith McIntosh. Yes, Keith.
Hello, thank you, Steve. I'm glad Mike took you back to your sporting memories just to connect with our theme of the Zoom session. So that's great news. So good on you. Two comments from the show on Saturday night, which I thought were absolutely brilliant. One was, I thought Amanda set the scene very well when she said, in a complimentary way, there's no better time than we needed a laugh like that. And, you know, for what's going on in our nation and the challenges and situation that people are going through. If ever there was a time for some fun and games and laughter to lift people's spirits, tonight was the night. So congratulations. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, I spoke to Amanda. I did a radio show on Monday morning, and I spoke to her just before I went on air, and I was thanking her in two respects for a kind comment. But I think she was the third to speak to me. I think David ran and speak, then Alicia. But she was the first to reference what we've been through. And she's the one that set me off. She's one that, I generally started welling up just hearing what she said, because she'd obviously connected with what a hellish few months anyone in entertainment have had. Just not true. And just listening to her words. And at that point, also, I suppose it was also the point, it's a third judge. You thought you got a majority in your favour, that kind of thing, you know what I mean? So there was a big release of emotion for me when she spoke. And yeah, I think she has, you know, I think she has a lot of critics because people think she's just a pretty face on television, but she's a very intelligent and a very, very astute lady. She knows the industry a lot more than a lot of people.
Yeah. So good on you. It came through well. And I agree with her, by the way. I agree. And many others. And the other thing is, how's your head after bouncing that lone balls on your head?
My head's all right, but it was my finger that I injured. I finally took the bandage off. I'll tell you a quick story. The week after, we recorded that on the Friday night, and then the following Wednesday, I was at Southport Pontins. Right.
You're just name dropping now, aren't you?
There were 8 people, and I was so demoralised that when it came to the bowling ball juggling, I was juggling with the bowling balls, and I was actually just drifted off, going, nearly done now, Steve. You're nearly at the end of your act. And I threw up the false bowling ball, because one of them's false. I don't want to destroy your illusion here, Keith, but the false bowling ball, right? And the idea is, you throw the false one up and you clack the other two together to make a noise when it hits your head. So I do this at Southport, and I went clack, and I didn't realise that my finger was... I've done it hundreds of times and never done it before. My finger was like that in between the balls, and I basically just smashed it. And I looked down, and there was just blood pouring from the end of it, and I probably had to have stitches at the end of my finger put in. But the best story is I ended up at Charlie Hospital, went straight from Southport, Charlie Hospital, and I went in and I said, so what have you done? I've hurt my finger. Right, how have you done it? I went, I've been juggling bowling balls. She went, what do you mean? I said, well, if you watch Britain's Got Talent on Saturday night, you'll see exactly what I mean. And the woman behind the counter went, oh, there's a lad from Charlie in that. Because you all got masks and haven't we anyway? No one knows who's who. I was like,
And you know as well as I do that they'll live off that story for the next 10 years.
I know.
As soon as you were on there on Sunday, they'll be going around saying, I put his stitches in.
Exactly.
And I've got to remind you, that wouldn't have happened if we'd stuck to the original date that we had you in here.
Oh, you're right. That's why
You actually, and I've got to pay again respect to you for this, because we did preview it because we wanted to, so that people could, you're going to see Steve, he's our guest and he's going to be on Britain's Got Talent. And then he sent me, I'm talking to everybody else here, Steve sent me a text message. Norman, you're not going to believe this. I've got a gig. And that was and it said, unfortunately, it's on the 2nd, which is the date that I promised to come to do Sporting Memories. Would you, and this is why I respect, he said, would you release me from that? Can we fix another day? Because this gig's at Pontins. I said, of course, you're doing us a favour coming here. Of course you are. And I really meant that. I really, somebody would have turned around, a lot of other people in the business that we know, no names, they'd have turned around and said, oh, I'm not doing that. Right, I'm not doing sporting memories. I've got to go. I've got to gig.
No, I'd never let you down.
No, I know you wouldn't, Steve. But
I think that's what. In fact, I think letting you down that way. I think that's what my old grandma would have called that, a God's tap. That's what she used to call it, a God's tap. If ever you know, if you were doing something stupid, get down off that fence, and you didn't get down off the fence, and then you fell and you hurt yourself. She'd go, that's a God's tap. It's a God's tap.
You're in a different world than we are, Steve.
Yeah, Charlie.
let me come back to you. I know you mentioned it, and it was noticeable. Again, you'll be like it when you watch other artists. You watch the artist, you appreciate the talent, but you pick up little things and you think, when you started to get emotional, I said to Val, I said, he's getting emotional now. If he's not careful, and you paused for a second, you got yourself back to that situation when she was talking about it, and you quickly, because there wasn't a lot of time, you went on to it. But yeah, you've got a lovely wife, and you've got the kids. How many kids have you got?
Three daughters.
Three girls, three daughters. Yeah. And for all these weeks that we haven't been, I mean, I'm in a different situation. At my age, I've done my bit. I've got, a bit of money put aside. I'm not a lot, but I've got a bit of money put aside. I won't tell you how much, because my son's actually in the corner doing with her thinking, oh, that's a loan coming up. But no, he's writing it down already. Must remember to ring Dad later, you know. But seriously, a lot of entertainers have gone through a lot of heartache, because particularly with the venues that you do, the comedy clubs and the close audiences and the theatres, you suddenly turn around, and the ships, the cruises as well, and the same. Yeah. The 23rd of March, their career stopped. And literally all the people who we know from Lancashire Entertainers Golf Society, who do the working men's clubs, and they do regular all over in Yorkshire and all over the place, and it was suddenly cut off. And then you suddenly think, I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got a family to look after. You must have gone under, it's all right laughing, you must have been under a lot of pressure, Steve, over these past few months.
Absolutely. And I've had high points, I've had low points. During the lowest points, I've had moments where I genuinely thought I will never be performing in front of an audience again. And that included Britain's Got Talent. At the time, it was a bit precarious whether that had ever get concluded or anything. And when you start to think what else you can do, and who would employ that? You know what I mean? I could never go into an interview and sit seriously across someone, and even to be a shelf stacker at Tesco's, and look at me like, oh, he's a clown, he's been juggling with the tin cans, get him out. It was horrible. Absolutely, I've considered everything. Funny enough, there's just around the corner from us, local corner shop went up for sale, and we've been looking at, well, maybe we can get some money together. Should we buy it? And I thought, I might, quite like being a little shopkeeper. And we could toy with that idea for a while as well. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. I think the hardest part of it was there never seemed to be, we can't, and I still don't think we can see the end.
No.
There's a little bit of light, there's at least chinks of light at the end of the tunnel at the moment. So clinging to those, but it has been really, really tough. You're right.
And the difficult thing is, of course, with all the aid, the financial aid that the government's given, it's the artists of our level, with all respect, who've not had any help, not mine, but who haven't had any help at all. Because if you're self-employed, you can't prove that you've got that much, and then how do you assess what it is, you know?
That's exactly it. And you know what, I think people have been furloughed at their works, and the people who've been, like I said, had the self-employment payment scheme. I'm paid through my company, and it's the one, I mean, there are, if you search the internet, the stories, but it's kind of been a bit hushed up, really. There's, I think, 2-point-something million people who have not been entitled to any help. And so, I think we're a forgotten lot, really. And so that's why we're probably more desperate than anyone else to get back to the normal, a proper normal.
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean, it's like, I mentioned my son Andrew, as you know, because he promotes and he promotes a lot of tribute bands. But the difficult thing is the theatres will not be open until next year now. I think that's quite obvious. Yeah. But you put them in, and the dates that he's put in with the comedy club that he started in, that you will be appearing on what date is it, Andrew?
March.
3rd of March next year.
3rd of March next year. Just thought I'd mention it. It's like Ken Dodd. Have you ever interviewed Ken Dodd on the radio? When I was on Radio Lancashire, and John, the station manager, as you know, John Clayton, said, when Ken comes on, you ring him up. God bless him. You rang him up at home. You left a message. He never answered the phone. He left a message. Then he would ring back, and we'd fix the dates up. And that's what we did. And we did quite a few shows with him, television shows. And he said, and John Clayton said, when Ken Dodd comes on, Norman, all he will want to do is mention the venue, the date, and the price of the tickets. Don't let him do it. I said, how am I going to? He said, just talk to him, throw different questions at him. And I said, right. So and he always called me son, Ken. And I said, well, we've got one of the great legends of comedy, blah, blah, blah. Please welcome the one and only Mr. Kendall. How you going on, Ken? I'm all right there, son. Are you coming to watch me at Blackpool Opera House on the 26th of April, he said. Yeah, the seats in all parts, and I'm saying, yeah, Ken. Yeah. Don't forget, because I've been going there for many, many years, And after that, I've got this one in this area, Preston Guildhall. I'm saying, Ken, and trying to shut him up,
Genius.
But the point is, going back to the gigs, you've got to put the gigs. Andrew's got to put the gigs in March now, because you need 2 months to promote them.
Yeah.
And then even then you're thinking that far ahead. But
well, that's the problem with pantomime. You see, that's why people keep going on about pantomime being cancelled in August, thinking, they might put it back on. They go, there's no chance, because it's a massive production, and they don't just appear. So even when this theatre start to reopen. And you've also got to wonder about how much of this money that's been banded by the government will filter down to production companies. It's all very well opening the theatre, but there's no production companies left to put things in the theatre. We're going to be starved of entertainment for a while.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm doing a tour next year and the following dates. I wish I had a date. I wish I had at least one date to plug there. The 3rd of March. So we'll go with that one for now.
Yeah, hey, I'm sure it'll be a big success. Anybody else want to ask any questions? I don't want to hog this in that sense. Anybody else? Andrew wants to ask. Oh, yes.
I'm on Facebook, and I think we're friends on Facebook, and every so often I see a video pop up of you juggling something or practicing or something. I was wondering, how much time do you actually spend off stage working on this act? Because it's not just a spoken act. You've got, skills as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of people wonder about that. To be honest with you, I don't practice very often, and I'll tell you the main reason.
That's because no wonder you kept dropping the bowling balls.
No, the main reason the only time I practice is when I'm doing a new trick. Old tricks I kind of think, but in actual fact, a lot of the tricks that I do are not as complicated. The big jugglers, I'm sure there'll be jugglers watching my performance going, well, that's not that difficult. But I learned very early on that this applies to anything. It applies to magic, it applies to dance. It's not necessarily how skillful it is, it's how you put it across. It's the same as a joke telling, it's the way, it is genuinely the way you tell it. And I learned very early on that if you're juggling with unusual things, or you're doing it in a different slant with a bit of music, and you're doing it doesn't have to be the most complicated trick, but what you do have to practice is your timings on it. So in terms of things like the guitar juggling, that took weeks. In fact, I would go so far as to say the guitar juggling and the ping pong ball juggling with my mouth took years of, and I was fortunate at the time when I was learning those tricks that I was at theme parks where I was being paid to entertain people all day anyway, so I could spend some of that quieter times practicing. So I was in that lucky position that I could. The juggling guitars, it was about 2 years before I could juggle with them all right, but I couldn't stop juggling them. And I used to break guitars all the time because the only way to stop was to be dropping them on the floor. That was the only way I could stop. So that was for about 2 years, and then finally I worked out a system if I can just land it at the end through my arm like that, I can catch the other one. I worked out a way of doing it, but it took, like I said, 2 years to that. And the ping pong ball juggling, that took years and years, because it's one of those things you can only actually practice. You can't spend hours a day practicing that because your mouth dries up, and you used to get, it sounds ridiculous, but the weight of a ping pong ball is very light, but when they're falling from that height, they used to hit me on the lips there, and I used to get little cuts under my lips where it trapped my lip between that and my teeth. So I'd have all sore mouth, and so I'd have to stop it for a couple of days and then go back to it. It's ridiculous, really, isn't it? Yeah. Like Norman says, I should have got a proper job.
No, if you ever want to try golf balls, no, that would be really.
All right.
And take your glasses off, you'd be all right.
Yeah.
One of the things again which impressed me, and it impressed the panel, was your high kicks when you did the dance routine. So did you actually? I mean, I know again we go back to the stuff you used to do at Park Hall in the medieval banquets and the all-round entertainment. So where did the high kicks come from?
I really don't know. And it's similar. The other thing people talk about is I get 2 ping pong balls in my cheeks. I must have been gifted with, I don't know, expandable legs and floppy cheeks. The leg kick.
I think you're thinking of and a big mouth.
Yeah, maybe. I think on the recording, I think Alicia, the judges missed my comment when she said, "It's amazing." I said, "I'm very flexible, but I can't do Tuesdays." And I think I didn't say that.
It was almost as funny as when you said at the beginning that last time I was on it's to show you how famous. Yeah. I can't go out and be out. And she went, "Really?" And you looked so happy because you thought, I can ad lib. And that was an ad lib.
That was the highlight of the show for me. And that was my in. I thought that makes this little, it's like normal. When you do gigs, a lot of gigs blend into one because you just do your material and you get off stage. But the ones that stick in your memory, ones that something special happened or something a little bit different away from the norm. Now, I know it was only a one-off gig anyway in that circumstance, but because she said that and it allowed me to break away from what I had planned, that's my highlight of the whole thing. Alicia's little, and then her realization on her face was just beautiful. Beautiful.
The fact that Ashley Banjo actually stood up and pointed to me.
Amazing, isn't it? Amazing.
But when you talk about the material and not having to work, the difficulty, juggling, I suppose, but when you're talking about the comedic side, the comedy content, I always found that we do the pantomimes first of all, then we did a Christmas tour when we stopped doing the pantos, and then we had 3 weeks off in January, going back on stage doing the gags to link the songs. Because you haven't been doing it, you think, what comes after that? If I do when we do the after dinners, and if I haven't done them for quite a while, I'm doing gags and I think there's a Wigan gag follows that, and I can't remember it. But I mean, it's an age thing now. It is definitely an age thing now. How difficult is it from that point of view?
You're absolutely spot on. I have it every year where I'm a bit rustier. And this is one of the reasons I've never done Britain's Got Talent in the past, funny enough, because the auditions for that are in end of January, beginning of February. And it's straight after I've done pantomime. And I'm rusty. And I've always thought, I don't want to be doing something as major as that when I'm just a bit rusty. I'm not in that. Come July, and you're like that, you're firing on all cylinders and you think you're the best comedian in the world, you know what I mean? But when you come out to pantomime, and then so come out of lockdown, nearly 6 months of not doing it, it's really, really hard. And I did have to rehearse it. I went to a dance studios actually up in Fleetwood, and I went in there for 2 days, just going through the routine over and over again in my head. As boring as monotonous it was, I knew that if I didn't at least know where I was going with the next trick, etc. I wouldn't be as relaxed as I was by the time it came to it, because I'd be still worrying about the next thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So we're getting near the end now. Anybody else want to ask a question before I actually start winding up? Because obviously time's beating us. Yes, Mags. Can you demute yourself, Mags? Yeah.
I was just wondering, Steve, I don't know if I'm right or not. I don't know if I remember seeing you on a cruise ship.
You might well have done. Yes, I've done 7. What cruise was it? You know, can you remember?
I can't remember now.
Can you remember what line it was, Mags? What ship?
No. I just seem to remember the table tennis balls.
Do you remember the conversation afterwards? Lots of people saying, well, he weren't very good, was he? In which case, yes, it was probably me. No, they're always a tough crowd on a cruise ship.
Oh, I enjoyed being on it for about 7 or 8 years now. But I only did 2, perhaps 3 in 1 year, because I didn't want to. I had a lot of work at home, and the gigs I was doing at home I enjoyed. And basically, between you and I used to take the cruises as long as my wife could come with me, and it was a paid holiday.
Well, yeah,
a paid holiday, you know. But yeah, I used to enjoy them, you know.
Some of them. I mean, I've seen some. Been lucky enough to go to some amazing places in the world doing it. Yeah, I've done a lot. I've done a lot of cruises. I think they're all normally good. I'll tell you, the only time I've struggled is when they have these black tie nights where they're all dressed up for the captain's dinner, and then you're the entertainment afterwards. Because there's like the other side. There's a bit when people are in those suits. They're same as corporate gigs when they're black tied in. There's a little bit of it brings out the snobbery in people, and they just sit back a little bit more like a king or a lord. We're an entertainer, then, boy.
Yeah. No, I enjoy, because I've always done the after dinners and Rotary clubs and everything. And you need the black tie for charter nights and things like that.
Well, you're more experienced. That's the thing, yeah.
As opposed to older.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I enjoyed doing them on the cruise. I enjoyed the dressings up, and I enjoyed doing the show. When we had the black tie night, I would wear a black tie on stage. Yeah. And then I thought, oh, this is like going back to the old Sunday night at the London Palladium where they always...
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Black tie. So that was fun. But the good thing I enjoyed is the fact that because the people came from all over Britain, and I'm thinking, when I first started doing it, I'm a Lancashire lad doing Lancashire gags, Wigan and stuff like, and Liverpool and all that kind of thing. And I thought, well, how do you get over it? You can't pick out. And I got used to it straight away. And because when I did the old days about the tin baths, you know, the tin baths in the houses and all that kind, and the maiden and all that, and I did the first one, and then people were coming up to me from Bristol after the first house. Oh, we had one. We used to have tin bath. We had a tin bath, and then Newcastle, the Geordies were coming. And I thought to myself, that proved to me that everybody is the same. It doesn't matter where you are in the country. You all have the same sense of humour because you've all been brought up the same way. Each generation has been brought up their particular way, you know. But I used to love them. I must admit. But anyway, oh, sorry, Andrew. Yes, Andrew, you wanted to say something? Yes?
It was just with talking about the cruises. I was thinking the act that you do is got a lot of visual elements, which means it could easily sort of promote to international audiences. So once you've won Britain's Got Talent, are we likely to see you hitting America and getting a spot in Vegas?
You know what? My wife keeps talking about that. She's saying, I've had this really strange idea that you're going to go to Vegas and we're going to go and live in Palm Springs.
Can we go with it?
I just won one. I almost got through to a final of a British competition before I got to. Yeah, you're right. I do always think that my act, because of the visual element of it, is certainly adaptable to all kinds of languages and all kinds of countries. So, yeah, I don't know, Andrew. We'll just have to wait and see. This is the exciting time I'm living in right now, isn't it? Just see what happens.
So the cruises you've done at the moment have all been English audiences, yes?
I've done American audiences as well. I did the Carnival cruises for American, but mainly English. Yeah, English speaking anyway. Right,
because I've been on cruises as well with the Caribbean, not to Caribbean. We've done the Baltic cruise with the big ships. I can't remember.
Oh yeah.
And what they do is, and when we did one in America, we went to one in America. They actually they introduced the act in 4 different languages.
Wow.
The English, Spanish, Italian, and I can't remember. And this was when we were coming out of Florida. We were coming out of Miami. Just for the short cruise, and I thought, oh, that would be, I wouldn't fancy doing that at all. But the acts that they had on were ones that could actually entertain everybody. And your act, as what Andrew quite rightly said, with the juggling and with the comedy that you use, the comedic body you've got, and the comedy that you use, they're not gags. You did 6 minutes. It's difficult doing a 40-minute spot doing that.
Yeah.
But, so that's going to be the transition, isn't it? Really? But you've got the potential there because you've got the comedic figure. They always say in comedy there are funny men who tell stories, and there are men who tell funny stories. If you've got a funny man who tells funny stories, you cracked it, and I think you cracked it, Steve Roy.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, the judges actually use the expression, the old showbiz expression, you've got funny bones. You have, and honestly, I don't know, it sounds really weird this as a mate as well, but actually with being a Lancashire lad and as local as Charlie, and I'm sat there and thinking he's one of ours, and that's what really, have they set the date for the final?
Yeah, 10th of October. 10th of October will be the final live. They're planning on doing that one live. So again, it's about time. It's about sticking to your time on that one because you don't want to overrun or you're in real bother. So it's about sticking to a time limit and just. But again, I'm just going to go out there, just going to enjoy myself.
Yeah, and that's the point. You enjoy it. If you enjoy it, you'll do it better. If you do it better, you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. So that one's live. So, and the good thing about it, and with Britain's Got Talent, I think, is the fact that it's a shop window for everybody who's in that final.
Yeah.
There might be a winner, and we've had on The Voice, you've had things like that, and you've had with the one that Simon Cowell does. You know, you've had winners, but then you've had people who've been runners-up and third who've gone on to do a bigger career than the person who won it. So
I think technically getting to the final, you become like I think you're supposed you're top of your genre for that year, aren't you? So if someone's looking for a comedian and they look to that, they're going to get me, which is brilliant. There's 2 other comics I should stress in the final apparently, or Maybelt will be. I'm only guessing now. I haven't really got any clue who'll get through, but I bet there'll be
exactly what you were saying here, Royal. But go on, yes.
I bet there will be at least 2 comics. I would. I'm just trying to split it up about the genres that there's. I think mind you, it's a public vote, so I don't really know how they can guarantee that they're going to get music. There'll at least be 2 music acts anyway, isn't there?
Yeah.
In an ideal situation, I'll be the only comic I'll come on at the end and I'll laugh, relax.
Was it an advantage? Not sure coming on last. Because it's the I think it always is because
I think you're fresh in the memory. I think it would more of an advantage if you'd gone to votes because I think you're more fresh in the public's memory. As it was judges' votes anyway, I don't think it mattered. I was going to say the only advantage, but I tried not to watch. I watched the first couple of acts and got so intimidated, genuinely backstage, going, well, especially the kids, the little kids, and you're just going, wow, at that age and the confidence they've got.
So
the dancing lad, the lovely lad, and the lovely girls, the singer, and you're just going, wow. So I had to stop watching then because I was too put off by their brilliance. To be honest, it sounds ridiculous, but I was. Yeah,
it's absolutely. And again, with all that's going on these days, I phoned you the other day to say everything all right. Yeah, it's all right. I can't stop too long. I've got a live interview I'm doing with the Granada Report, and I'm going to have to. And I thought, stop bloody pausing. You know, it was the way it's the way you casually talk. So a live interview with the Granada Report.
Oh dear!
It's been absolutely wonderful. It really has, Steve. It really has.
Pleasure. It's been a pleasure, Norman. Anytime.
I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't do this one more time. Put that poster up again, just to remind everybody again. Everybody who's in here, you want to get in
March.
I'm going to be putting this up every damn week from now till the 2nd of March if we keep having these.
I don't think you'll need to. I think it'll sell out next week, this.
So that's on Wednesday the 3rd of March. We've got Phil Walker, of course. Everybody knows his dad as well with Roy, but we've got Phil, we've got Steve. There's Paul Emery from Salford as well. But it's going to be a great night. And
make sure you come up. If you're on this, make sure you come up and chat to me afterwards as well. If you're a part of this.
As what? Sorry.
I was going to say if you're part of this and you're coming to that gig, then make sure you come and say hello afterwards.
I'm comparing.
Well, I know you are, not you.
Are you talking to me or Andrew?
No, I'm talking to anyone.
Yeah, the rest of us.
Anyone who comes to the show, make sure. Yeah, I was one of that lot on the talk, the sports talk.
And if you want to make it really easy for Steve, because he'll be shattered after the show, if you want to write your name on a £10 note and give it to me, I'll then introduce it to Steve and then go.
Brilliant.
I'll say thank you very much. Thanks. I can see by all the smiling faces that we've had a great. Can we have a big round of applause for
thank you,
Steve Raw, the one and only Mr. Steve Raw. Thank you very much indeed. Brilliant. And I'll hand back to wind up with Keith McIntosh. Yes, Keith.
Brilliant. Thank you, Norman. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll find that you've been in the company of the 2 of the best entertainers in Chorley and West Halton. Anyway. So Steve, absolutely brilliant. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity, you didn't watch it live on Saturday, then just jump on, just type in Steve Royal on the website, have a look at the YouTube Britain's Got Talent, and you will be able to look and laugh back at, and you've heard the stories about the bowling balls and the juggling and the guitar, and I can assure you, you'll still be laughing at News at 10. It's absolutely brilliant because it's good fun. So you'll really enjoy it. I recommend it to you. So
can I just say something, Keith? I thought I'd recorded it on the Saturday night, and I hadn't recorded it. And I tried for 48 hours to get it on catch up. And I couldn't listen, and eventually I got it. And I sat there and watched it. And this is no word of exaggeration. I counted it. I watched it 11 times running. Because I just kept thinking, that's magic. I like that. And of course, if you watch it again and again, you pick something else up and I think, I missed that the first time. And I'm phoning people up saying, have you seen Steve Ross? Have you seen Steve Ross? On YouTube? You know,
brilliant.
You're not going to start juggling, are you?
No.
I'm definitely not going to start juggling. That's definitely
brilliant. So thanks very much, one and all. We've enjoyed your company. Now, Norman, just remind us, who have you lined up for next Wednesday's Sporting Memories session?
We've actually got Peter Nicholson, the ex-Blackpool and Bolton Wanderers player. We got him lined up the other week, and then we got our dates mixed up when a certain Mr. O decided that he wasn't going to come on the date he should have been, so we had to swap it round, but I'm not going to go on about that. So we've got Peter Nicholson lined up, but Peter Nicholson being an ex-footballer, and if we deal with ex-footballers, you know what it's like. Nothing personal, Mags. I'm not saying it's anything about Steve, but what it is, you have to check with them 4 days beforehand because they say, "Oh, I put it in my diary," and then when like golf tournaments, and then they ring up and say, "Oh, is it tomorrow?" "Yes, it is tomorrow. Are you playing or not?" You know, because they're so used to being shepherded and told what to do here and what to do there. So I've got Peter Nicholson. I will ring him on in the next 2 or 3 days just to check it's definitely in his diary and that he's definitely coming back. And he's a lovely man. I'll tell you some lovely stories about him later. Peter Nicholson, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. All the best. Cheers now.
Take care, Steve.